Rev up your engines!
Andrew, perhaps Scotty, what's your current thought on a 2022-2023 Subaru Crosstrek? I have an order for 2023 2.5-liter engine. You say some are good and bad. What about that? Okay, well, that's a pretty decent one from my experience. My customers that have later model ones like that have all been really happy with them. The 2.5-liter engine is a good, strong engine, as long as you don't turbocharge it. You don't want to turbocharge it. Boxer engines and turbochargers, they end up blowing, right? And it is not that horrific 6-cylinder boxer that Subaru makes. Those engines have been nothing but problems since they built them. Head gaskets blowing, but the 4-cylinder engines, they're pretty good. Yeah, they used to blow head gaskets. That was 20, 30 years ago. The modern ones don't blow head gaskets if you take care of them. Jules said, my truck got flooded completely, water and engine and all. What are the chances of fixing it now? Slim to none if it's a late model vehicle, because everything is electronic. Everything's computerized. And how did it get flooded? If it was salt water, kiss it goodbye. The salt water corrodes everything. Now, if it was fresh water and it was a really old vehicle, like, 74 Ford pickup truck, you could probably still fix it because it didn't have that much electronic crap to work on. We'd had a carburetor, we'd had a mechanical fuel pump, stuff that, it's simple to fix. But any modern car, when they're flooded that bad, it's usually time to say goodbye because everything's computer run. They'll be all destroyed. You got water in your engine's probably destroyed. If you got water in your engine, you probably got water in your transmission. That'll be destroyed. Probably not worth fixing. That's why almost every insurance company, if the water gets up to the window, the dash, they'll total the car and say, because they don't want to get involved fixing an endless money pit because they have to guarantee the work. Then maybe 6 months later, something else will break because it was flooded. That's why they total. Hunter says, can a car overheat after driving a car and turning the engine off? Yes, it can if it has a problem. Back in the day, you're driving a car and a mechanical fan cools the radiator, but when you shut it off, it's not working anymore, right? And let's say you got a weak engine. It could be still putting out heat and overheat itself. Modern cars are set up so that if your car gets too hot, even if you shut it off, it'll run the cooling fan until the temperature gets below a certain parameter. So if you got one of those cars, you really wouldn't have to worry about it, because if it was too hot when you shut it off, the fans would run until it cooled down. On an old car, no, not so much. But if you really beat the heck out of a car, like it's a turbocharged car, and you're driving it real hard, it's not a good idea to just bring it in and shut it off. You'd want to bring it in and let it idle for 8 or 10 minutes, and the fan will run, it'll cool itself down, then shut it off. Little Centaur ever says, I got an 09 Dodge. How do I tell the difference between header exhaust gasket and lifter noise? Well, lifter noise is more of a clattering sound, but the header exhaust, it's winter now, right? And it's cold. So all you'd have to do is start the thing up. You hear the noise, you will see the hot exhaust gas coming out. You'll see it, because when it's cold outside, look at the back of the tailpipe of your car. You see the smoke coming out, right? You would see that smoke coming out by the headers. Now, if you didn't see any smoke and it's clattering, odds are it's the lifters. And Dodges are notorious for getting a lifter noise and notorious for eating up the cams. Then the lifters, which run off the cams, start making a lot of noise. So just start it up in a cold, and then you'd see the headers. You'd see the smoke coming out if they're leaking. And if you don't, start listening with the stethoscope on the engine, and you'd hear the clattering more. Sebastian Silva says, Scotty, what do you think of a 1980s Suzuki Samurai? They were cool little Jeepy things, right? Now, they rode like washing machines. I had a customer owned one in Houston. He took it to visit his parents in Jacksonville, Florida. When he came back, he sold it. He said, that was the worst riding vehicle on the highway I've ever been in. Bumpity, bumpity, bump. And it was hard to get parts for him in the United States. Suzuki never did big in the United States except selling motorcycles, not selling Jeepy vehicles and cars. They pulled out of the United States. They don't sell them here anymore. So, and I like driving them, especially with a standard transmission. But, they didn't ride all that well, and they were underpowered for the American market. I've seen a lot of Suzuki engines blow because the guys just had to rev them too hard to get the traffic and keep up with the speed. When I was in Texas, everybody driving fast. So, it's not something I'd ever buy. And today, you can't even get parts for them. So, it would be stupid to buy one in the United States. Wong says, how do I distinguish normal oil consumption and burning? I got a 2009, 134,000 miles. He said the oil was low, and it's only 3,000 miles after my last oil change. Okay, well, it depends on how low it is. 3,000 miles, and it's what? A 14-year-old vehicle. If it burns a little bit of oil, say it burns a quart of oil every 3,000 miles, a quart and a half, that's nothing. Just keep adding the oil. Oil's cheap. Engines are expensive. A lot of cars burn oil as they get older somewhat, and it's not really going to hurt anything. You want to check your oil yourself, though. The dipstick, the top line is full. Once it gets under and it's a quart low, then I'd say add a quart. And then you don't have to worry about anything. You can just keep a record of how often it burns oil, and then you know what kind of shape it's in. Joseph Parton says, how to fix water sounds behind the dashboard on a Ford Fusion EcoBoost. All right, well, generally if you get water sounds in your dash, that means you're low on coolant. The heater core is the highest point in there, and it's in the cooling system to get you hot water, right? If you hear gurgling sounds, it usually means there's air in there. Burp the air out of your car. Like if you have a driveway, back it up so the front is higher than the back, or jack the front up. Take the radiator cap off, run it with a fan in front of it, and you can often burp the air out that way. And if that fixes it, great. Now, if not, we mechanics have vacuum systems that will suck the air out, and then we fill them up, and there won't be any air in the system. Generally, it is because you have air in the system that gurgles. Now, sometimes, though, valves get stuck partway open, and they'll gurgle, and then you got to take the whole dash apart, and it costs a fortune on a Ford to take the whole dash apart. So just pray you're low on coolant. That's a very common problem that does exactly that. Astro Grow says, any tips on getting a Banjo bolt off a power steering pump? All right, yes. Those are stinkers to get to, right? Those Banjo bolts can be on there super tight. And often there's very little working room. I'll tell you what I often do is, if you can access that bolt, I get a long bar, a long extension bar, put a big old socket and try to pull them off. Now, sometimes, if that doesn't work, and you're taking that Banjo bolt off because you're going to replace the hose, a lot of times what you can do is, what the heck? Just cut the hose off because you're putting a new hose on, right? Then, either you can access it or take the two bolts that hold the pump off, take the pump completely off, then you got it on the ground and you can easily work on it, get an impact wrench on it or whatever to take it off. Realize if you're going to replace the hose, you don't care if you have to cut the hose off, because you can put a new one on anyways. I realized that years ago. I was struggling with one and I thought, I can't get to this thing, it's driving me nuts. And I realized, hey, I already bought a new hose assembly. I'll just cut the old one off, take the whole thing off and do it on the ground. And that's a lot easier to do. Jake5758 says, how do I know if I got a timing belt or timing chain? I got a 2009 Toyota Camry 3.5 V6. You got a timing chain. I work on them. That's how I know. But it's pretty easy to tell. The ones that have timing belts have plastic timing belt covers on the front of the engine. When you have a timing chain, all that stuff is solid metal and it's sealed because it's part of the inside of the engine and you can't have oil flying out of there. Timing belt is only in the air behind the cover, so it's not all sealed up like the ones that are made out of metal have to be because the oil is lubricating the chain. There's no lubrication on a timing belt. Juan Hernandez says, my parking light is on after being engaged on a really cold night. Any idea how to fix it? All right. If you say it's a really cold night and your parking brake stays on, doesn't turn off, you probably got a bad switch for turning on the headlights, parking off, because that's what feeds it. And if it isn't shutting off and it's cold, the contacts for some reason, maybe they've wallowed out and they stay on instead of off. Now, the only other thing would be a headlight relay. If the relay's sticking on, would do the same thing. So you check the relay and check the switch. It's probably the switch. From my experience, the switches stick. You know, they're just plastic crap these days. They only last so long, then they break. They're not metal like when I was a kid. The lights were switches solid metal and they basically lasted forever. Now they're plastic crap. JW says, I got a question. Who can rebuild a 2007 Ford Explorer rear end in Houston? I used to use Wayner and he was at a differential rebuilding a standard transmission that doesn't exist anymore. There's townhomes there now. They sold the land and they built a whole bunch of townhomes. You know, it's gentrification of Houston. I don't know anybody that really rebuilds them anymore. You might ask around people in Houston, but Wayner is long dead. I know Wayner's dead. And the company that he worked for, the standard transmission, that's gone. So good luck trying to find somebody. A lot of the heavy duty rebuilding stuff is gone. Things cost so much money to do correctly, nobody pays for it anymore. They just go get another car. Or they take potluck and they go to a junkyard and buy a used differential. You might try a used one. That's what a lot of guys do these days. Richard Arkwright says, Scotty, my Citroen diesel says it's overheating from the startup. What could be my problem? If it's saying it's overheating as soon as you start it up, no car can overheat that fast. So odds are your warning system is broken. Check the temperature sending unit, the wiring, see if something is wrong with it. Because you start up a vehicle, you can start up any engine with no coolant in it at all. It's going to take a few minutes for it to overheat. So if you start right up and it's saying it's overheating, it's got to be a flaw somewhere in the warning system. That's the problem with a lot of stuff. The vehicles are better made, a lot of them, than they used to be, but it's the warning stuff that breaks down. Cars never, ever really have massive oil leaks where it spurts up because almost all the lines on most modern cars are all internal, right? But they'll often leak oil because the oil pressure sending unit leaks and then your engine blows up because the warning system broke and all the oil squirted out. So in your case, it's probably just giving you a false reading. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.